Out of all of the Alexandrias that were founded by Alexander the Great, when you hear that word, there's only one city that comes to mind: Alexandria of Egypt. This city at the end of the Nile Delta and the beginning of the Mediterranean became a thriving port city and one of the major trading hubs of the ancient world. It is also the site of our final wonder of the ancient world, the Pharos of Alexandria. Alexandria was founded when Alexander the Great conquered, or rather liberated, Egypt from Persia in 332 BCE and saw the immense potential of this piece of land located on the Nile Delta, even though at the time it was only a very small fishing village called Rhacotis. The city was built, and with 2 natural harbours, the newest trading destination was born. But what do all harbours need? You guessed it, a lighthouse. It's debated as to who actually built the lighthouse and when, but construction apparently began under the rule of Ptolemy I Soter, who became Pharaoh of Egypt after Alexander's death. Alexander was a big deal during his lifetime, but he became even more of a big deal after he died. My classical civilizations teacher in high school, Mr. Kerr, always said that if you want to be remembered forever, you need to do something really great and then die. That's the pipeline to eternal fame, really. It's don't live long enough to be a disappointment or to just fade off into obscurity. And we can see this in so many people. Look at the 27 Club, right? It's all about the potential that they could have had. James Dean, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all of these people. Amy Winehouse, right? Alexander the Great was like the OG of the 27 Club. Except he was 32. And by 32, he had conquered the known world. And then he died. I am 32, so I guess that means that I have definitely passed that age where I could do something really great and then die. So, like most people, I am just destined to fade off into obscurity. Yay. With this increasing popularity and the importance of Alexander the Great, the 2 harbours of Alexandria needed to be visible and easily identified as the great city of a great leader. On top of that, the Egyptian coastline is pretty flat and doesn't have many identifiable landmarks, so something was needed in order to guide sailors safely into the city. That's where the island of Pharos comes in. Pharos is a limestone outcrop located in front of Alexandria. This island was first mentioned in the Odyssey when Homer mentions the legend of Helen coming to Egypt with Paris, only to get bored because the only thing in the area that she saw was seals. And I can get that. I can understand that. Helen later came back with Menelaus after the Trojan War, and when Menelaus asked an old man what the island's name was, he said it was Pharos. Menelaus thought he had misheard the old man, and so he asked him again, like, what is the name of this island? So the man decided to say the old Egyptian pronunciation of Pharos and said Prutis Island. Menelaus clearly wasn't a good listener and misinterpreted Pruti as Proteus, the sea god. And now I can see why Helen might have left Menelaus. He doesn't seem like a very good listener. Gentlemen, take a note. So from then on, the island was known as Pharos and its patron deity was Proteus. So we just combined the two, I guess. Anyways, that was a very long-winded introduction to the island of Pharos, but that's where the lighthouse was built, and this lighthouse was so big and so monumental that it became known as the Pharos of Alexandria. And Pharos became the generic name for later lighthouses because everyone wanted to associate their large, tall, pointy thing with the biggest and best tall, pointy thing. Did I mention men made these? You can also see this word in modern languages today. The French use phare, the Portuguese say farol, and the Italians and Spanish use faro. There are a lot more examples, even some Slavic ones, but this is not a linguistics channel, so we must move on. The building of the Lighthouse of Alexandria probably began sometime around 297 BCE, though other sources claim it was started much earlier, around 283 or 282 BCE. Either way, it most likely got started during the reign of Ptolemy I and was finished under Ptolemy II. A wealthy Alexandrian courtier and diplomat is most credited among ancient authors as either the architect or the donor of the lighthouse. Strabo wrote that the dedication on the lighthouse said, "Sostratus the Cnidian, friend of the sovereigns, dedicated this for the safety of those who sail the seas." And when I say inscription, I don't mean like a dinky little plaque placed on the side somewhere. We're talking about an inscription fit for the largest lighthouse ever known at the time. We have an account from a 10th century Arab historian called Al-Masudi, who said it was made up of large inset letters made out of lead, and each one was approximately 50 centimeters wide. This was clearly made to be big enough to be seen by everyone leaving and entering the harbor. It was also the largest one yet. Other lighthouses were made before this one, obviously, or else they wouldn't have been able to make a wonder of the world worthy lighthouse there, because you need to fail a lot and try new things before you can go as big as they did for the Lighthouse of Alexandria. And when I say big, I mean big. Pliny wrote that the lighthouse cost 800 talents, which today translates to about 9.2 million British pounds, which is almost 12 million US dollars. Stories about how big it was have probably been exaggerated at the time, but no one was really trying to diminish it in any way. Epiphanes claimed that it was 559.6 meters or 836 feet high. Josephus said that the light was visible from the Mediterranean as far as 34.5 miles away, and Lucian of Samosata said that it was visible from 300 miles away, which would essentially mean that the people in Paphos on the island of Cyprus could see the lighthouse from their bedroom windows. That's pretty crazy, and I doubt that that actually happened, because I can just imagine that the people of Paphos would not be very impressed if that was the reality. Regardless of how far the light actually carried, everyone agreed that the light itself came from a huge fire in the base that was reflected by mirrors from the top of the building. The logistics of lighting such a large fire would have been just a feat in itself. Ridiculous amounts of fuel, wood, and charcoal would have been needed, and Egypt really isn't the place where you find lots of trees. It's probable that they used dried animal dung as a solution to make up for their lack of timber, but even then, you'd still need a lot of poop. Like, a lot of poop. Luckily, you didn't need a giant fire, as much of the light was produced from its reflection on highly polished metal. This metal was probably burnished bronze and similar to ancient handheld mirrors. Furthermore, the sun would have provided a much stronger reflection during the day, and since sailing at night wasn't the most popular thing to do, they probably only kept a smaller fire going. Other than its size and its inscription, we actually know very little about what the lighthouse actually looked like. It's generally accepted that the lighthouse had 3 tiers. The first tier was about 60 meters high, the second was 30 meters, and there was another 15-meter top tier that included the statue of Zeus Soter, who was placed as the crowning glory of the structure. Editing Raven here. Hello. We do actually have quite a beautiful excerpt of the Pharos of Alexandria that I found after filming this video, so I wanted to share that with you because it was all just numbers. This is more exciting. This is from Achilles Tatius, who was a resident of Alexandria in the 2nd century CE, and it doesn't actually tell us anything specific, but it does evoke the wonder and amazement that would have struck everyone who gazed upon the Pharos of Alexandria. It was like a mountain almost reaching the clouds in the middle of the sea. Below the building flowed the waters. It seemed to be as it were suspended above their surface, while at the top of this mountain rose a second sun to be a guide for ships. According to an Islamic description of the lighthouse by historian Ibn Tulun, there was a mosque on top of the third stage with a cupola tipped with a crescent moon. If this remodeling happened, we don't know how or when, but now I have many questions about how they did it, and then how people went in, because that would be really cool. The best evidence that we have for what the lighthouse looked like when it was built are the coins that were minted around the time and the subsequent centuries after it was built. Particularly Greek imperial coins that were issued from the mint at Alexandria during Roman times. Greek imperial coins were very objective and there was a great amount of accuracy in them, so we can get a lot of information from these coins. Some coins only show 2 tiers to the lighthouse, but on some examples you can even see basic details of the structure, like these sea monster tritons blowing trumpets or conch shells on the first stage. There's a doorway at the base, and Zeus on top with a long scepter. Now, the door is higher on later coins, which might suggest that there were alterations to the lighthouse at some point. That, or the artist messed up. We'll never really know. The most detailed description that we have of the lighthouse comes from an Arab traveler called Abu Haggag Yusuf ibn Muhammad el-Balawi el-Andalusi. Sir, that is an epic name. He visited as a tourist in 1166 CE and said that the Pharos was at the end of the island and was square, measuring around 8.5 meters on each side. He mentions the inscription and also says that the A measured a little over 54 centimeters, so that seems to be pretty standard, like we mentioned before, with the accounts of this inscription. He also states that the doorway was high up and there was a 183-meter long ramp that led up to it. What's surprising to me is that there were many rooms inside of the first floor and that there was a ramp up to the top of the Pharos around a cylindrical core. Abu measured the first stage to be 57.73 meters high, with the middle stage being octagonal in shape and measuring 27.5 meters high. According to Abu, the top was cylindrical and was 7.5 meters high. So in total, with how much it was standing above sea level, it was 117 meters high. I feel like I've just been giving you height stats all episode. I know it's definitely too many numbers, but I do want to give you all of the possibilities so you don't just read one source and take it as gospel. In regards to the life of the Pharos, it actually lasted pretty long in comparison to other wonders of the world. Colossus of Rhodes, I'm looking at you. The lighthouse was slightly damaged by earthquakes in 796 and 951 CE, and Arab sources state that it was structurally damaged in 956, where the 2 top 20-ish top meters collapsed and an Islamic-style dome was placed on top to make up for the statue of Zeus. And then badly damaging earthquakes happened again in 1303 and again in 1323. That's a lot of bad luck. A traveler named Ibn Battuta first visited the lighthouse in 1326 and said the lighthouse was in ruins. And when he visited again in 1349, he said it was so ruinous that it was no longer possible to enter. There's also a 10th century legend that says the lighthouse was destroyed in the 700s AD by a eunuch that was sent by the Byzantines to gain the caliph's trust and get permission to search for the supposed hidden treasure that was buried at the base of the lighthouse. There's always a treasure, you know, there's always a treasure, but there's never actually a treasure. It's one of those horrible things. Like, one of these days, I really wish that there actually would be a treasure, so that way we can keep telling these stories and believing them and holding out hope, because I don't know how people keep thinking, oh, there's a treasure there, when there never ends up being a treasure. The rest of the legend goes that the eunuch undertook the search in such a way that badly damaged the foundations of the Pharos and caused it to collapse. And of course, in true adventure movie fashion, he was able to escape the crumbling building to a ship that was waiting for him. Someone really needs to make a movie about this. There seems to have been like major drama about the lighthouse, even though the lighthouse was still supposedly standing when this legend was written. But hey, it's a good story, I would definitely go to the theater to watch this. What actually happened is that the ruins were cleared away in the 15th century when the Sultan of Egypt, Kate Bey, built a medieval fort using some of the ancient materials. The fort is now a naval museum that displays artifacts that were recovered from the Mediterranean from Roman times up to the Battle of the Nile in 1798. For centuries, this fort was all that remained of the Pharos of Alexandria, alongside whispers of limestone and granite blocks that had been built into more modern buildings. That is, until 1968, when the remains of the lighthouse were rediscovered thanks to a UNESCO-sponsored expedition of marine archaeologists led by Honor Frost. She confirmed that there were indeed remnants of parts of the lighthouse underwater. Further work was put on hold due to a lack of experts in the area, and also because the area became a military zone. That is, until 1994, when a team of French archaeologists led by Jean-Yves Empereur rediscovered it on the floor of the eastern harbor of Alexandria. 85 feet below the surface, they found a gold mine of finds that stretched across 5 acres. We had sculpted columns that looked like papyrus plants dating to the time of Ramses II, which was around 1200 BCE, that were probably used for Alexandrian mansions. We had obelisks belonging to Seti I, and 25 sphinxes were found. As you can see, remains of more than just the lighthouse have been found underwater. Wharves, houses, and temples that fell into the Mediterranean due to earthquakes and other natural disasters give us even more information about what Alexandria would have looked like when the lighthouse was still standing. You can actually go scuba diving and see the ruins if you want, if you're ever visiting Alexandria. So if you're one of those people who like to scuba, add this to your list. As for the Pharos itself, underwater evidence came in the form of a 70-ton, 38-foot high red granite block, which would have made up part of a doorframe. There were also flagstones and lintels. You might think that this is already amazing as it is in terms of archaeological finds, but it doesn't end there. In total, the French team catalogued 3,300 pieces, including a statue of a Ptolemaic queen in the form of the goddess Isis, and possibly a matching pharaoh sculpted from that pink granite from Aswan. If these are the likenesses of Ptolemy II and his sister wife Arsinoe, these would have stood at the front of the lighthouse. The Pharos of Alexandria set the standard for grand lighthouses everywhere, and it was so ubiquitous that its legacy lives on in multiple languages today, just like the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus and the Colossus of Rhodes. It may have been the last wonder of the ancient world, but it certainly was not least. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. That is officially the end of our 7 Wonders of the Ancient World adventure. If you liked that video, go ahead and smash that like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a video, possibly even a bonus video for this series coming out very, very soon. So that means click that bell icon so you get notified. Big thank you to all my patrons over on Patreon. If you like the channel, you want to support the channel, head on over to Patreon and become a patron. The link is in my description down below. Here are all of my socials, and as always, stay dirty, my friends.